Hey guys, my name is Alfie Evans, and today we're going to react to Sentencing Disney Villains for Crimes Part 5 by Wickedbinge. Now, of course, I think this is also the experimental villains, so we're carrying on for the experimental era. So, without further ado, let's get into it. 3, 2, 1, play.
Alright, we talked about the first 5 films of Disney's experimental era, so let's take a look at the rest of them. You didn't think we're gonna leave you hanging, did you? While the last 4 films of this era aren't quite as popular as the earlier ones, these films still have interesting stories, concepts, and of course, villains. Ranging from alien invaders to outlaws to bowler hats gone rogue, what will be their ultimate fates? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wickedbinge, and this is Sentencing Disney Villains for Their Crimes, the Experimental Era, Part 2. We're gonna start where we left off. It's time to head for the west with the villains of Home on the Range. Up first is the main villain,
Kidnapping,
Alameda
trafficking,
Slim.
animal
Slim's
cruelty,
big goal is
abuse.
to steal as much cattle as possible, so that he can sell it and make a fortune. Right off the bat, this makes him guilty of kidnapping and trafficking.
Guess I gotta do everything around here myself!
He even possesses the ability to hypnotize cows and put them into a trance, which we believe is grounds enough for animal cruelty. Lastly, he's somewhat abusive to his nephews, the Willie brothers. In a way, pretty much no villain in this era is to their sidekick. We have to sentence Alameda Slim to 40 years in prison. While that might sound like a lot, once you remember that he's allegedly stolen over 5,000 cattle, you might change your tune and say we're being too easy on him. With how much damage he caused to all the farms, 40 years is a perfect sentence for this nefarious outlaw. While Slim might be the main villain, he's actually working on behalf of a more powerful figure. That character is the Steve Buscemi-voiced Mr. Wesley. Mr. Wesley is a black market businessman, and he sells the cattle that Alameda steals, meaning he can be charged with both black market trading and trafficking.
I thought you said 5,000 even.
While he plays a small role and has a similarly small amount of crimes committed, like with Slim, the severity of those crimes is enough to earn him a relatively harsh sentence. So, he absolutely deserves 15 years in prison. Since he wasn't quite as involved in the crimes as Alameda was, nor did he have nearly the amount of charges, he does get off a little easy, but it's still hard to deny that he played a major role in this diabolical plot. Not even being voiced by the always great Steve Buscemi is enough to get him out of this one. Finally, we have the Willie brothers. The nephews and
Willie.
partners in crime of Alameda Slim, they're nowhere near as merciless as that foe. They are instead dull and moronic, much to the frustration of their uncle. Nevertheless, they're guilty of aiding and abetting in his plan to steal cattle and make a huge profit. This in turn means they participated in animal abuse and kidnapping, just like their uncle.
4,997.
However, because of their minimal role in the plan and youthful age, we don't think it's appropriate to give them as bad a sentence as either Alameda or Wesley. What these two youngsters need is a round of community service. We could see them tending to the farms and cattle they harmed, not only fulfilling their community service requirements, but also making amends with those they'd wronged. While the uncle and Mr. Wesley have made villainy their profession, we think there's enough time for the Willie brothers to turn a new leaf. The sky is falling. Actually, it's just the next film, Chicken Little. First, it's not just one villain, not just two, and not even three. How does an entire alien race sound? That's right, it's the aliens. Although we don't see
Kidnapping
a
and
lot of
brainwashing.
them, they play a huge part in setting the plot of the film into motion, and they're at the center of the movie's climax. In their attempt to find the missing child Kirby, they kidnap several citizens of Okie Oaks. They invade the city during his final act and even brainwash poor Foxy Loxy. Yeah, she might not be the greatest person, but was that necessary? Between these 3 charges, we'll argue that a sentence of 10 years feels the most necessary. While they do apologize and are forgiven, we can't get over how they kidnapped and invaded an innocent town because of one missing individual. Couldn't they have just sent a small search team down and had them recover Kirby? It was overkill, and given the amount of mayhem it caused, 10 years certainly seems like a sensible sentence. Next is Foxy Loxy, where we run into a bit of a problem. While she is an antagonist, she doesn't really do anything that could warrant a charge, let alone a sentencing. Yeah, she's a bully, but does that really warrant time behind bars? Therefore, in a rather unusual case of an antagonist who committed no actual crimes, we'll go ahead and pardon this character. Our recommendations, maybe some in-school suspension, just not prison time. The next movie is Meet the Robinsons. First is the goob himself, the bowler hat guy. The bowler hat
Oh,
guy is a
I was already
madman
given us
obsessed
the
with taking
answer.
down his
5
old
years in
roommate,
prison.
Cornelius
I think I
Robinson.
made a
He
mistake
teams up
there,
with
mate.
robot Doris and steals a time machine in an attempt to rewrite history in his favor.
So I know his
Because your
punishment.
future
It's
is about
understandable.
to change.
He's actually guilty of 2 counts of theft, as he not only steals a time machine in the future, but he also takes the memory scanner machine from the young Lewis. And for messing with the space-time continuum, we could additionally argue that he has committed an act of vandalism. Goob is ultimately involved in 3 different offenses, and for that, we sentence him to 5 years in
You
prison.
already know
We
that.
could have given him a harsher sentence, but since he does change, we think this is a rather appropriate one. There's also the fact that he's clearly not in the best headspace during these events, evidenced by how easily Doris was able to trick him into obeying her. Besides, he's already lived so much of his life stuck in one room. Would another 5 years be that painful of a punishment? Next is the true villain, Doris.
Murder
While
and
Goob might be the more
brainwashing and
personal foe,
slavery.
Doris pulls all the strings. Determined to get back at her inventor, Doris helps Goob in his mission to rewrite the timeline, only to cast him aside when that plan finally comes to fruition. After aiding him in his thefts, she wreaks havoc all over the world, before finally enslaving the human race. It's also heavily implied that she and the other bowler hats kill a few individuals off screen,
Ooh.
making her the only villain on this list to
That's
have
something I
killed
didn't know
anyone.
about when I watched
Guilty
this
of
film.
murder, brainwashing, enslaving, and rewriting history, we have no other choice than to give this bowler hat the death penalty. How the
Ooh.
punishment will be carried out in a world like this is speculation, but it's likely to be painful, even for a machine built to avoid such feelings. Perhaps she'd be subject to one of those hydraulic press machines. Who knows? Rounding out the experimental era, we have 2008's Bolt. First is the notorious Dr. Calico. Before you say anything, yeah, we're well aware that Calico was little more than a fictional bad guy for a TV series in the context of the film. However, we're going to treat him as an actual villain for the fun of the video. A very James Bond-esque villain, Calico is a genius terrorist out for world domination. He's the arch nemesis to the heroic Bolt and has no problem capturing his loved ones to wipe him out once and for all. Between his crimes of conspiring, kidnapping, terrorism, animal cruelty, and attempted murder, we think Dr. Calico deserves a life sentence.
Ooh.
Some may argue the death penalty would be more fitting, but since his actions don't seem to cause any casualties, we believe it's not entirely necessary in this case. While he sought to conquer the earth, unfortunately for him, it looks like a jail cell will be the only thing he'll be ruling. The final villain of the day is Agent. Agent is obviously
Agent
Penny's agent
Doofus
and
said.
a major driving force behind the scenes of the Bolt TV show.
I just booked you on the Tonight Show.
He's also a far more realistic villain than the cartoonish Dr. Calico, which makes for an interesting contrast between them. He's a greedy businessman. His only crime is also his only mission, to control Penny. He's only interested in making sure she's working on the series, and he'll do anything to make sure that's her only focus.
I'm talking cover stories, production deals, executive producer credit.
He's guilty of extortion, and with that in mind, we give him 1 year behind bars. Since he has the least amount of crimes out of any villain we've covered today, and is a bit player, 1 year is the only amount of time we can legitimately give him. Hopefully, he'll use that time to reflect, but who are we kidding? He'll just be worrying about how much money he's missing out on.
Yeah.
All right, court
Yep,
is
that's the only thing
adjourned.
he'll probably be
Let us
missing
know in
out.
the comment section if you agree with our choices. And
I think the harshest punishment I got to say has got to be the bowler hat, because since she was given the death penalty, might make it understandable. But I think the most lenient punishment, I can't think of anyone that has a lenient punishment. If you guys think of any of these guys had lenient punishments, please let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. And also go subscribe to Wickedbinge if you haven't already. And as always, until next time, peace out.